Hello, and welcome to the Charmed Life podcast. This podcast is all about magic, metaphysics, mysticism, and the unconditional love of the universe. And I am your host. My name is Tricia Carr. I'm so pleased to be here with you on this episode. Now, if you are new, welcome. Oh, my heart is just expanding, sensing you, feeling you out there, and seeking and growing your light so that you can contribute the uniqueness of you to this beautiful world. And so here we are. And if you are someone who is a longer time listener, well, my heart's exploding for you too. So this episode is a conversation episode with Sadhu Dah, and he's been on before, and we had so much fun on that episode. I just love his perspective. It's really, we come right into the middle with the heart and with the light and the raising of the consciousness and everything, but he has such a different modality perspective. He comes from these wonderful trainings that I don't have experience with, but again, we have crossover. I don't know if you heard that, but that was my Con, my kitty. I'm recording this bit here at home with my little studio set up at home. At any rate, Con wanted to say hi, so there's my kitty Con. And so before we get into the conversation with Sadhu, hi Con, come see me. I'm going to go ahead and leave it in because he wants to be a part of it. Well, anyway, before we get into the episode, I do want to give you a little announcement here, and that is that we've just announced a new workshop that's coming up. It's going to be October 30th and 31st, 2021. That's right. One of those days is All Hallows Eve, Halloween, and the Lightshine Spiritual Academy, which, if you're new, that is my company, the spiritual academy that is with myself and my co-founder, Crystal Ann Compton, my BFF. But anyway, we're having a 2-day workshop on the weekend of the witches' holiday, and it is a witchcraft workshop. Ooh, it's going to be so fun. Now, if that strikes you as what witchcraft, if you're where you are in your development, let me just say that really all of these spiritual and metaphysical practices that we engage in, including affirmations, which, that's kind of mainstream, even very secular as a consciousness development practice. But affirmations are basically spells. And that's why they call it spelling when we're using words. And I don't know who is credited with this, but someone said it to me recently. Someone in I think in my Mystic Arts Academy said that every thought is a prayer and every spoken word is a spell. And so the witchcraft is encompassing also, like using crystals, setting intentions, and of course using holistic and homeopathic remedies like herbs and essences. So I'm actually teaching this with Stephanie C. Weinman, who is our manager, the head teacher in the Lightshine Spiritual Academy, along with Crystal and myself. And Stephanie has this great depth of knowledge in witchcraft. Now, I'll tell you, this is not about Wicca, which there's absolutely, I think Wicca is probably a lovely religion. It's just, this is a non-religious spiritual practice around the craft. And it is also completely about light, white magic, if you will. So it is only positive intentions, only blessing. Everyone who will enter into the class will be welcome to bring their positive, blessed intentions. So what's going to be great about this too is, well, first of all, we are having it on what is considered the witches' holiday, as I said, All Hallows Eve or Halloween. And so there's a powerful energy in the constellations, and also in the lunar placement will be really powerful at that time. But what else is really amazing about this is that if you may have some ancestry, like I do, where there was working in the craft, working with nature magic, and working with the magic or the spirituality and healing of spirit and nature together. And so that is basically what this is going to be about. We will be teaching some specific spells, talking about how to work with crystals, herbs, essences, and how to craft and compose your own spells, which is a very powerful work. That's why we do affirmations. We also have some meditations, and we will be doing live in the class some spell work together for personal healing, for personal abundance, and also to send a blessing to someone, which could be an individual, or it could be a group like your city, your country, or the whole world, or another country, something along those lines. And it's going to be really, really beautiful. I'm so excited. I'm getting chills right now. So I wanted to let you guys know about that right here on the podcast, and also point your attention to the Lightshine Development Circle. I'll pop a little audio in here about this, but just to give you a heads up, and also the Mystic Arts Academy. And I will also explain that in an audio about mid-roll of this episode. But now let's get into this wonderful conversation with my buddy, Sadhu Dah. He is a spiritual teacher and an exorcist. And this is once again kind of maybe a reframing or a reclaiming of a word that maybe some religions have used, or maybe even Hollywood movies have used to mean something really scary and dark. But essentially, exorcism is to displace unwanted or toxic or unhelpful energy with positive light energy. So we call in positive light energy, and we shift and change and raise our vibration, raise our light quotient and our consciousness. So that is Sadhu's one of his main practices. He has a fantastic training, and actually, he is as I recall, he's a high priest in a Wicca Coven. So it's kind of cool, all this alignment that in the season and everything. And so I hope you enjoyed this conversation. We have a lot of fun, and he talks about a very specific creation of a certain kind of talisman. So as always, anything that resonates, keep, and anything else, just let it wash over you and be curious. That's what I am. I'm just curious about it. So I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Sadhu Dah, and I'll chat with you on the other side. Welcome back to the program, Sadhu Dah. I'm so excited to connect with you again. And we had to do everything we could to hold our tongues for the action after I hit record, because we're already sharing all kinds of spiritual, magical stuff. So, if you didn't see the episode or hear it that Sadhu was on before, you can check the description because it is there. But what have you been up to lately, my friend?
Oh, well, so, we just kind of can't help it. Sometimes we were catching up a little bit and already started spilling the beans on some good stuff that should be on the show. But, what I'd recently adopted, like a couple of students from Japan who had actually, been watching your show, and that was how they found me. So, that
so
was
rad.
awesome. And I've been like doing a line of like Gumintang statues. So that's one of the things like I've been doing recently. So like,
Yeah, show us.
these little guys.
Oh, you crafted that? Did you do the pottery as well?
So I go by like vintage or thrift shops, and I'll find like porcelain dolls, or like anything that's like a cute little baby.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where I got this one. And then because it was empty, I was able to fill it with like cemetery soil from 7 different cemeteries. I took like ashes from incense that was like used in several different rituals, and just a ton of different like sacred and ritual objects and materials and ingredients. So it gave it like a really powerful like base or like battery. And then I used some of the animistic Thai Wicca that I studied in, which the process of making like a gumintang. So you take the spirit of a stillborn infant, and for people that come from a Western background, they might necessarily have this preconceived notion of like, oh, that sounds so dark. That sounds like black magic. Like you're enslaving a child's spirit.
Yeah.
It's actually not really like that. So the way that the Wicca practice of making gumintang is done is you're drawing up a spiritual contract with this child spirit, because a stillborn infant has all of the potential of a life that it never lived. So it has this massive amount of energy, years of life that has never been brought to fruition. All of that experience has been robbed of. So it wanders around through the bardo, the river Styx, if you will. And it has a long, long time till it can reincarnate on its own naturally. and it can become prey to various different astral parasites or lower level entities. So what someone like me or monks or lairsi, ruisi, different like a jarn or like spiritual masters will do is they will call from the veil, will reach into the veil, and we use sacred kata and chants, and we'll have ceremonies and rituals where we summon the spirits of these stillborn infants, and we place them inside of these like effigies or these statues like this gumantang, and then we use like these Pali spells which come from like the Khmer language, and then we're able to have this spirit that can share merit with us. So my good
like a
deed,
guide, kind of. Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
my good deeds become the good
Yeah.
deeds of that spirit. And then when it reincarnates, eventually it's going to have a much higher reincarnation. And while it's in this statue, it's going to be safe than it would be out in the spiritual realm just roaming on its own. So I've been kind of doing a
That's
lot of
amazing.
those lately.
And so are you selling them or giving them to your clients or something like that as well? Yeah.
Yeah, so I've been selling them. I've sold about like 8 of them already, and then I have like an order for 5 more that I'm making and selling, and every one of them are very unique
Mm-hmm.
and they're very special, and I like will often like customize it for the client as well when I make it. And so it's just kind of interesting that like I've known how to make these for a while, and I've made a couple in the past, but it seems like there's a demand for it now. So I'm like, well, I mean, why not? Might
Right.
as well just continually start making them.
Well, so would you say that if with a stillborn infant, that spirit could be crossed over to 5D, lest they, wander around the bardo, which sounds like a little bit more like 4D or something like that, like
Yes.
Earthbound.
So you could cross it over
Mm-hmm.
just on its own,
Yeah. But it can
given
still be
that you know
summoned.
how to cross a spirit,
Yes, of
you know.
course, of course.
So you could do that,
Mm-hmm.
but you're also going to send the spirit exactly where
Yeah,
its
right.
karmic requirements are, telling it to go. I mean, you're not divine source. So when you cross it over, all of those things are kind of like the bureaucratic red tape of the spirit world. That's going to get sorted out on its own. So what you're doing when you make like something like a gumantang is you're changing that, because the spirit's not crossing over, it's staying with you,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's changing its own karmic patterns. It is growing and gaining merit. The meta that it produces, the loving kindness, grows as well. So its very soul structure actually changes. So by the time that it actually does cross over, it's going somewhere completely different, or
Mm-hmm.
it's gaining an entirely new experience that it wouldn't have got otherwise just being crossed over.
Right, right. Well, I mean, and that's the whole gig of being a spirit guide anyway, is that it's a cooperative growth process. I mean, like, if you think about it, if you being in spirit where time is fluid or somewhat non-existent, certainly not, it doesn't exist the way that it does for us, being attached to our lives and our growth gives a more of a concentrated growth experience, because we are bound to this structure of time, birth and death and everything. So it's kind of expedited in a sense. That's what I've always felt about spirit being,
Yes.
the gig of being a spirit guide. Otherwise you could be like, the myth of the sirens, and they, is that in the Odyssey? When the sailors were drawn into the sirens' lair, and they thought they were there 5 days, and it turned out they were there like 100 years, because it was just in this state that was so different, and they didn't grow 100 years. They felt like they grew 5 days, and so it's kind of like that concept being resourced better, right?
Yeah, it's a suspension, if you will.
Yes, yeah, it's a kind of suspension. So then, and then how does one utilize the statue and work with it?
So
The
that's
infant.
the interesting thing is a lot of times there will be certain rules encoded for Gumantang.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, pretty much like every master I've ever met that makes them, because it is a spirit statue. So, I mean, you could definitely misuse it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but every master I've met that makes these, and especially the master I learned from, um, taught it in a way where even if I wanted to do it different, um, it's not necessarily going to work. So one of the rules he has encoded with his are you can't perform black magic with them and you can't curse people with them.
Yeah.
However, if black magic comes at you or somebody throws a curse at you, the Gumintang is able to receive it and redirect it, or is able to cast a punishment upon the person who sent it your way in the first place. But itself cannot do that, because then it violates some of the spiritual law that's been like put into place in creating the Gumintang, which would prohibit it from gaining the karmas, which is why it was, selected and put into a contract in the first place. So it's kind of like a safeguard to make sure that not only is the person not abusing it, but also that the spirit's not being abused as well. So it, kind of like a dual, reason for doing that. And then people will often end up using them for like gambling, calling a lover, supporting a business, charm, general like attraction, like in social situations, or for protection, like all kinds of different things, mostly desire based. So not necessarily something that's going to be akin to like huge spiritual growth, but more so making this physical life a bit easier, or having the things that, like I said, you have a desire for. And by them helping you with that, because spirits are so deeply connected with our world, they have more of a pull with that, and they can kind of see things and orchestrate things a little bit better. So it makes sense, because you're not having this, spirit do something that's beyond its means.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, this is still a child spirit. So it's not going to really understand or have the ability to do certain things that may be like the spirit of a yogi or a divine entity or something of that nature would be able to do or work with. It's just going to help you with your everyday life and your everyday desires and goals.
Kind of like just its life force is going to be able to support. And it has a wonderful resource of life force, having not expressed it in the life that was intended. Yeah.
Exactly. It has huge power on its own, and then the statue acts like a battery, so that it's not, creating an attachment to you, right? Because if I were to summon a Gumintang and like, basically child spirit, and I were to send it, to your home to help you and assist you, well, it's going to have to receive and draw energy from somewhere, regardless of the potential of energy it has to operate within this world. It still needs a source. So the statue is like a perpetual battery, just constantly going.
Because
so
it's
that
got
it
the
doesn't.
enchantment, the charm. It's a talisman. Well, like a talisman times a million. It sounds like more than just a
Exactly.
talisman. Yeah, really powerful. Really, really charged up. I like that. I like that battery metaphor. That makes a lot
Yeah,
of sense.
it's accurate.
How about can it help and assist with like physical healing and stuff like that?
I would say if you were a healer and you had like the knowledge and were able to break down and explain it to
Oh, okay.
the spirit would be able to help you. There are certain things that you could use it for that might not intentionally be designed for, but if you were to do that, I would say you would need to teach it how. So you'd
Okay.
have to kind of be instructional with it.
Yeah. Go into an intentional session and exchange information, or really teach and give information. Yeah.
Right. I mean, if you were an energy healer and you had one of these in your space and it saw you doing energy work enough times on people, then you would be able to ask it to come in for assistance. And then you could kind of like pull yourself back in the middle of a session, and then it would just kind of take over and kind of go with the strum or pattern of what you would normally do, because it's learned.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, and for those of you who are listening, it's the one that he is showing us is this beautiful bright yellow color it's got a little black mohawk, and it's got the black language characters on it. It's really very, really cute and cool looking. I like it. Very neat. So we started to chat about something. So let's pick up our conversation. So
Yes.
I was starting to, I was sharing with Sadhu about something. So I'll share it with you guys. And essentially, so I had a session with this practitioner, and it didn't really pan out. This practitioner did an energy scan as a part of the service in advance, and they definitely did that because I didn't know when, I'll just use the right pronoun, he was going to do it, but I didn't sleep all that night, and I had all kinds of astral events happening, and I was having like astral dreams, and it was also like dusting up things that were like ancient, like family stuff, ex-best friends, all these things. And it's like, wow, where's that coming from? But I slept really poorly and felt really, really bad the next day from the sleep deprivation, with poor sleep, actually. It was in this suspended state. So I know the person has psychic abilities, big deal. But then when we got on the actual phone session where the person was meant to, explain the scan thoroughly and also give me a reading right there on the spot, he actually had to abort the session. He said my guides weren't present, and he's for some reason not able to go deep with me, and so he aborted the session. And I felt really bad for him, so I was like, no, it's fine, you're doing fine. Because I felt so bad for him, because he seemed like he was embarrassed, and I don't know, but he also couldn't explain his, like, all of the different things that he had on my energy scan. Including, like I was telling Sadhu, that he said that I have a life hex on. Someone has hexed my life. And he also said I had dark AI and these other kinds of different attachments. So you started to say, like, that it seems like, what was to tell your assessment of what may be going on there? Maybe. We don't know for sure. And now for these messages. Hey guys, it's Tricia Carr. I have new exciting things going on with my Mystic Arts Academy. You can now subscribe to receive all of the live monthly content for about a third of the investment of a single class. Included are at least one downloadable guided meditation per month, 2 live events ranging from classes, channeled messages, group readings, intuitive development guidance, Q&A sessions, and tons of community. You'll also have access to a private Facebook community for fellowship and support, and this space is kept super sacred and high vibrational. Your subscription gives you access to the whole library of classes and live events, which are on a vast array of topics. All events are offered online by Zoom video call. Subscribing to the Mystic Arts Academy is also a way for you to support the Charmed Life podcast and engage on a deeper level. I'm offering the subscription at a super low rate of $22 a month. Joining now locks in this rate for as long as you're subscribed. Click on the description of this episode or go to my website, triciacarcharm.com, and click on Mystic Arts Academy. I look forward to connecting. The Lightshine Development Circle is a sacred place for spiritual seekers to practice giving and receiving readings. The circle is open to all psychics, oracle card readers, mediums, channels, energy healers, Akashic record readers, and any other type of spiritual practitioner who offers their service via a reading-style format. Strengthen your intuitive abilities. In a circle, you can work with your abilities in a close-knit, supportive, and friendly environment where your privacy and personal development are honored. This program includes access to 2 development circles a month, opportunities to give and receive intuitive readings, and opportunities to receive generalized feedback and input from a Lightshine Spiritual Academy trained facilitator. The Lightshine Development Circle is open now for a very affordable monthly registration, just $22. If you are ready to open or expand your intuitive talents, to co-create a sacred practice space, and to give and receive intuitive readings with like-hearted seekers, then join now and let's shine together. Find the link to read more and register in the description.
We don't know for sure,
yeah.
But I've heard kind of similar, situations, obviously, different terminology and etc. But it sounds to me like you have someone that's spent a little bit too much time playing in the astral.
Yeah.
And when you spend too much time in the astral, you have something that one of my first teachers was just like, he hammered this home like constantly, and I didn't listen. And he would talk about space neuroses. And then I experienced it and I was like, holy crap, this is real. Like this is like the worst thing ever. Ended up in a mental hospital. Like it was so bad.
Yeah.
So what ends up happening sometimes is you'll have somebody that has strong psychic energies. You know, they're the real deal. You know, it's not a joke. Like they could actually, you know, give you a reading, or they can tap into things. They have intuitive feelings, and, you know, they're on point. But you also have some people that have mental illness, and, you know, it's sad, but, you know, there's a bit of delusion, and there's, you know, a sickness of the mind, right? And so we're not judging that, but that is a fact of life. You know, there are individuals whose brain chemistry is just different. And sometimes you get people that are a combination, right? They might be psychic, and they might also have mental illness, and the two can feed off of each other. And then you'll have another situation, which I believe is kind of like a mixture of what this guy would be. And that would be somebody that has developed skill, but spends a little too much time out there in literally the mental plane. Okay. So like, you know, the astral is like right below the mental plane. So you have this place where creative energy is all based upon imagination. So when we do really powerful healings and we're imagining things, like that's where the magic starts. Without imagination, it can't begin. So like really powerful magic starts with imagination, and it flows from there, and the chi gets involved, and yada, yada. Anyways, you can have people that get into a kind of, maybe disassociated isn't the right word, but their mental energies become scattered in the astral. And when they try to coalesce it all together and bring it back, some pieces come back delayed, or some pieces don't come back, or some pieces come back different altogether. And then that person is trying to process that, and they're trying to make sense of it, whether it's for themselves or for a client. And they might not, you know, think that they are mistaken, or, you know, they believe in what they're saying, but that doesn't mean it's accurate. That doesn't mean it's right. And that doesn't mean that they aren't bringing you harm. So he might have gone a little bit too far in his scan and kind of, you know, pushed in some uncomfortable areas, or not really had a proper hold of his own energies, and have done this before a dozen times, and is just kind of going by feeling, but he doesn't really know what he's doing.
Right. And because,
you know,
I'll tell you also, I feel like he didn't tell me he was going to do that. And I think you need to tell someone that you're going to do that.
That's a violation of spiritual law right there.
It's a violation. It's also, it's clear that he doesn't have a lot of education around it. You know what I mean? Like that I was like, I had this terrible night, and then I woke up and I saw that he had emailed me at 6 saying, oh, here's your energy scan. We'll talk about it tomorrow on our call. And I was like, oh, no wonder. Someone was in there like bull in a china shop. I mean, I had a sort of consent to him because I had booked the appointment, but I didn't know the specifics of what he was going to do. So he didn't really have my consent. I mean, he didn't literally have my consent. And so he was in there harshly.
My first question would have been, how strong are your wards, and how strong is he? Because that's a very curious thing to me. Because, you know, I have like, you know, this spiritual altar in the background. I have all of these spirit statues. I have these talismans, these amulets all over my place. I have a lot of warding things that were, you know, literally power that was blown into me by monks. And so I have all this protection. If someone were to try to come and read me without my consent, they're going to be harmed. Their mental state is going to be fried. It's not going to be a very comfortable experience.
Well, that's what I'm saying. He had semi-consent from me, but the specificity of what he was going to be doing, he didn't have that. And I just had a bad night's sleep. I was fine. And but you know, what's so interesting is that most of his scan didn't really make a lot of sense, but there was one portion that made sense, and he was able to articulate it. So once
So
again,
that might
like,
have been the only ward that was willingly down, and he kind of tried to like those tumbler locks.
yeah,
So
yeah. So
when
one of them
someone's
clicked.
picking a lock and
Uh-huh.
the little tumblers go up and down.
Uh-huh.
So he might have had the the shape of a key. So it wasn't the right key because he wasn't given the right key.
Mm-hmm.
But he had enough of a shape of a key to enter the lock.
Yeah.
Which was the semi-consent, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then it goes in, but it doesn't actually have permission. So then it's just kind of jangling up and down on these tumblers, which is, wreaking all kinds of havoc for you. And he shouldn't be there in the first place.
Yeah.
But just by that little semi-consent, that little mold of the key, he was able to get something.
Yeah.
And so I feel like some of that pushback that made it a really uncomfortable experience for him.
It was so
and
uncomfortable.
that made him back out of the session. I personally, my thought process here, which could be right or wrong, I don't have all the details. This is just kind of my logical conclusion that I'm coming to, is I think he might have got a little bit of blowback from your protection and your wards, and that messed with him and scared him. And because he doesn't have necessary proper training or really knows what he does, and he's just kind of like raw potential, I don't think he knew how to interpret that or realized what actually happened, and it kind of scared him. He
wouldn't look at me in the eye for the rest of the session. He was like this and really uncomfortable. And I God, that's why I was like trying to make him feel better, because I don't think he intentionally was harming. I think there was ego and stuff, but then there were a few other things like when he was still trying, I guess. And I asked him a question. I was like, about my business and explaining my business. And he was like, oh, you're farther along than me. And he was like, I was like, so, who cares?
It's not about that, man.
I know. But he was like embarrassed and like, and then we were talking about clairvoyance versus clairsentience. And I was like, yeah, because and this was another thing that was, I think, accurate. He said my clairsentience, claircognizance, he had those as like / was 100%. And then my clairvoyance, clairaudience was, I think he said 60%. And that's about right. I would say that's how much I use them. It's like those two first. But, and he said, he started the session, he said, so I asked your guides what you wanted to talk about. You want to talk about your love life and clairvoyance. And I was like, no, I don't want to talk about my love life. I was like, I'm cool with my clairvoyance. I think you hit it right on the head there that it's about 60%. But my clairsentience is so detailed. I said, I could feel turquoise. I don't even need to see turquoise because I can feel it. And he was like again, a few minutes later, he was like, I mean, like you said, you could feel turquoise. I've never, I don't know how to do that. I've never. So again, I was like, he had this, like, he felt intimidated, but it was possibly also because he was embarrassed. I don't know, man. It was interesting.
I think somebody like
fun
that
for me, in a sense, it was fun. Not like I wasn't happy to see him like struggle. I just mean like as an experience to attract.
He's playing a fast and loose game there,
know.
and that's kind of dangerous.
It is.
Not just for himself, but for other people as well. I mean, if you would have been, not saying you're not strong, but if you would have been, stronger, or like would have realized it when it was happening and thrown it back like as an attack, you could have sent him to a psych ward.
Yeah, but it didn't feel like an attack to me. That's why I was trying to take care of him. It didn't feel like an attack. It felt irresponsible. You know what I mean? And I was
and I don't think it was an attack.
Right.
But
no, right.
He's kind of like bumbling around in the dark.
Yeah.
Didn't really know what he's doing.
Sin of omission. Yeah, I didn't mean to run you over with a car.
Right. And then he gets out of the car and he's asking you if you're okay,
Yeah.
He's even offering you a ride to the hospital, but like
that actually happened to me once too. Oh, actually, it was this really cool moment. I got hit by a car in a sidewalk, and it was weird, but right before it's so funny. So I was like in my head, and I was like, I really want to manifest about my business and everything. This was before I was full time doing this. And like right before I stepped off the sidewalk, I had a vision of Christ on the crucifix, and I was like, I will do anything. So I was basically like crucifying myself. So dramatic. And I got hit by a car.
Oh, man.
But
that's a little ironic.
It is, but what's so funny is and she ran over my foot. It was horrible. It hurt a lot. So my husband showed up to take me to the hospital, and the first thing I thought was like, I feel so bad for her. She has to go home to her family and tell them that she hit somebody in the car. That was stupid empath. I'm like thinking about her in that way, which, anyway. And then
I'm thinking about her insurance premium.
No, I hit a person, broad daylight. I was in the middle of the sidewalk. Like I don't know how she didn't see me. It's because I had put myself on a cross right before and made myself invisible. Anyway, so then when we were going to the hospital, I was wailing because my foot was smashed. And, but also at the same time, the paramedics said that I was really lucky because I was wearing my tennis shoes, and I usually walk around with them unlaced until I'm about to work out. And right before I put myself on the cross, my guides said, clairaudiently, by the way, my clairaudience is okay. It said, tie your shoes. And I'm like, I don't want to tie my shoes. And they're like, tie your shoes. So because I had my shoes tied, the car went over my foot sideways. So the sole of my shoe was able to protect it from breaking any bones. So it bruised.
Gotcha. Yeah. Like the pressure.
It was yes, exactly. If it had been like my barefoot, it would have been smashed. And if I hadn't laced the shoes, it basically would have pulled the shoe off like it was a bare foot.
Yeah.
So it was protected anyway. But we were going to the hospital, and I was like crying and traumatized and everything. And I was saying to my husband, I manifested. I thought it was cool. I was like, I created this. I was on the sidewalk, and my husband thought that I was having the space neurosis, I think, because he's like, honey, sometimes things just happen. I was like, no, it's cool. Magic is
you
real.
Weren't there.
And the next day I went up on Facebook with my face all swollen still, and I shared a broadcast called Magic is Real. All of that was the catalyst to me even starting this business and me starting this podcast. I hadn't done the podcast yet either. So even though it was negative, like a negative hex I put on myself for a second, and I feel so bad for her, but that's her karma. I can't deal with her karma.
Right. It's not your responsibility.
It's not my responsibility. I did feel bad for her. But yeah, I started I got a little settlement from that, of course, because, I was doing what I was supposed to be doing, and she ran over a person. And that helped me. Yeah, it's fair. And it helped me to feel empowered to be able to start the podcast, to invest in it and start the podcast. Isn't that crazy?
I'm really glad that you did, because this definitely seems like it's your path.
Yeah, I know, right? But it just like the magic, even the sort of negative spells that we cast on ourselves, they can keep working toward to the really cool stuff. So like me, that weird situation that I attracted with him, I came out pretty unscathed, less than, being hit by the car. But I don't know, it's so weird. Like, people are complex. Like there was,
Yes.
This is what I wanted to share with you. One time I was in Hollywood in the middle of the day at the gas station, and this man who's clearly an unhoused person, he was, seemed mentally ill because he was talking to himself, and he was really dirty and everything. And he started walking toward me, and I could feel that he basically had a message. There was a connection for us to make. So I stayed in my car, but I kind of protected my energy too. Like I had my arm like this, and I was like, do you have something to tell me? And he wasn't dangerous. He wasn't physically threatening. And he was like mumbling and, neurotic, in a kind of neurosis. He was like in the astral 4D, just like, what's going on?
Right.
And it's like
perfect
mumbling.
channel.
Yeah. Well, and then he said to me, your brother David says he's okay. And he says, thank you. I had only about a year prior to that, he was actually more like a stepbrother named David who passed away at only like age 50. And I was like, wait, what did you say? And he said, your brother David says hello, he's okay, and thank you. And I had like connected with his wife and everything. And then I was like, oh, and he goes, and he also wants you to know about the government and the red lighter. And he had a red lighter in his hand. And I was like, and I think we're done.
Yeah, and we're done here. Yeah.
So, you know what I mean? Like he got a little bit of something. My brother David was there saying, hey, while you're there, why don't you just tell her this?
See, and that's a perfect example of like, the being so divided. So you have someone like that, their whole life is unmanageable because they're just like this, switchboard, just like constantly being plugged in and jumped around, and they have no control over that. If somebody like him, were able to have a more fortunate situation, with appropriate resources, to take care of his physical needs and his mental health needs, and then was able to have like the instruction of a spiritual teacher,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, holy crap, would he not be an incredible medium or what, you
Right.
know?
Right. I know. And I remember when I was in college and I was in Psych 101 class, and the teacher, who's officially, a scientific, a man of science, said that schizophrenia, especially, and demon possession are the same thing. And he just said it like that very bluntly. And I was like, well, what do you mean they have the same? And he's like, they're just the same thing. And I'm just going to leave it at that. I was like,
Huh.
okay, man of science. You just like, he's just saying, he's validating both of them. Isn't that interesting?
Interesting.
And it makes me think of like when Jesus was able to tell me your name. And that's like doing our shadow work, right? He told the demon, tell me your name, and was able to call it out and to really exorcise those demons.
Well, on the topic of like schizophrenia and exorcism, because there's a correlation of like spiritual within that subcontext there,
Sure.
and I cannot remember the name of the article or where I read it, but I'm sure if you did some digging, you could find it. But I had recently read an article about how here in the West, a lot of our people that have schizophrenia that are in mental health institutions, or are being seen regularly, by a psychiatrist and psychologist, they tend to have some dark voices, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or they'll have a mixture of like voices that are positive, encouraging, and voices that are dark and just like very depressing. Whereas in the East and in more supportive countries, of like spiritual beliefs and practices, where these people aren't necessarily demonized, that do have textbook schizophrenia, and you can definitely diagnose them as that, but they have a support of a spiritual community, like a shaman and etc. It's very interesting because they were saying that the percentages of individuals in that caste have lower amounts of dark and depressing voices, and they have more angelic, more positive, more highly encouraging voices, and they might be having a life that's ruled by their schizophrenia, where it affects their daily living and interactions, but it's of a more positive nature.
Yeah.
So I find that to be very interesting.
Have you ever heard of the Rudolf Steiner teaching on the guides of the high, low, and middle path?
No.
Oh,
Please
it's
inform me.
I keep meaning to make a video and a lesson about this. I've actually had to do a I can't remember his terms, but essentially the guides of the low path would be guides or, entities who are usually more desire-based, and, they're kind of fixated on the physical realm. And so you have like people who are overrun maybe with these, guides or entities, and maybe they are a bit too dense, too materialized, maybe too lustful, too desire based, and you know what I mean, like and then so there's that. The guides of the high path are, all of these guides are technically more advanced than us or something like that, but still
like Asuras and Devas.
Exactly, yeah. The guides of the high path are, and as I recall, I think they're called the Aramaics. I don't remember. Maybe I'm wrong. One of them is called the Aramaics. Guides of the high path are also more advanced than we are. They might be, they're very high frequency, but they don't necessarily, and they kind of have like a greater good sort of mentality. So they could attach to us as a guide, and even not care about how well we come off in the situation, because it's just like the greater good. Who cares if they're in pain, suffering, their lives are ruined? We're going to tell them, and they usually start to work with the person by telling them how special they are, like building up their ego, tapping into their ego and building it up, and then
kind of like cults and love bombing.
Yes, the love bombing with narcissism and cults, exactly. And so actually, I would say cult leaders are probably more connected to the guides of the high path, because they're usually self-aggrandized, and they actually are channeling energy because they're making people feel good, but they're hypnotizing them and bringing them against like a normal, natural, human and
Mirror
spirit.
neuron rapport inducing floods
Yes.
of oxytocin. Yeah.
Right. So those are the guides of the high path. And they do, like, they have goals for rescuing and saving and up leveling, you know what I mean, collectives, but they aren't really working unity consciousness because they're, anyway.
Right.
So what we really want are the guides of the middle path. And certainly like archangels are guides of the middle path. And, you know, so they honor the spirit and the nature, and honor the free will and the whole multidimensional being. So that's I keep meaning to, like I say, make a video and a lesson about it, but it's an interesting concept. Ooh, maybe you can relate to that because you've had what of your story that you've shared, right?
Oh, which one? We were talking about a few things.
I mean, like your story where you kind of had a dark night of the soul, and you had the space neurosis there for a while. And did you have some guides or some entities that were sort of speaking to you that were making it uncomfortable for you?
Oh man, yeah, that was probably like the worst situation that I ever went through.
Yeah.
So I had like take a very, very long story and make it, as short as possible. But I had two things that occurred that made this the perfect storm. One was 2 ounces of Cubensi psychedelic mushrooms that were laced with PCP, not to my knowledge.
What's
Did not
PTP?
know that.
What's PTP?
PCP.
Oh, PCP. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Not good stuff.
Yeah.
So I didn't know they were laced. Actually had a lethal dose ingested and ended up having a heart attack and was in the hospital. Yeah, it was a whole thing. This was intense. And plus 2 ounces of mushrooms. Like, who would do that?
I have no concept of that because I can't use those doors. My energy's already too open, but it sounds like a lot.
And I haven't done psychedelics in years, and it kind of ruined it for me, and I'll never do them again.
Really? Oh,
but
wow.
Yeah, normally about 2.5 to 3.5 grams is usually what most people would consider like a trip. So 2 ounces is a huge difference between that.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and then being laced with like an upper like PCP, not good at all. So I was like tripping for 72 hours straight. Considering that without sleep, within a couple days, you're already going to have hallucinations.
Yeah.
So being on a very strong amount of psychedelics and also not having sleep for 3 days because of the PCP in your system as well. Yeah, like I was seeing the entire fabric of reality. And, a good portion of that was definitely like space neuroses. Like I can acknowledge that, it's like also an aspect of just tripping. But what made it even worse though was at that point in my life, I had been kind of led astray. And I was involved with some babaloas of like basically like Haitian Fudan, like high priest.
Okay.
And they were from Nigeria, and so I got mixed up with these individuals who, they definitely love bombed me, and their whole intention was actually to lure me to Nigeria to kill me and sacrifice me in a ritual. It was like a whole thing. Like there is an entire story to this that I just do not have the time to get into. But like, trust me when I say this was just like, this all happened like over the course of a year, like leading up to like that moment. And it was just the most uncomfortable experience, because like I ended up in a mental hospital completely losing all of my memory. I had like a fugue state and lost like my episodic memory, full-blown amnesia. I like came to and I didn't know my name, didn't know my social security number, my parents, like nothing. I couldn't remember anything that ever happened to me. And then like after like a few days of like being like awake, then it was like a thought came back to me and it was my name. And then I said my name out loud, and I said it like, well, who is, what is, and then it just like, it flooded back to me. And it was almost like a headache. It was like a spark, and it was like a headache. And then I remembered like my entire life, like in a flash of seconds. And I had tears just like streaming down my face. Like I couldn't even explain to you what it was like, because it was like I felt all those things for the very first time. It was like I felt my mom holding me when I was born. I felt like my first kiss being, in middle school. Like I felt, laughter with friends, and like it was like I felt the pains of scraping my knee as a kid. Like I felt everything I'd ever felt in my life, like within seconds as I remembered it.
Yeah.
And then it came back to me. And then it took me about a good year and a half to like stabilize. And I ended up like still having like periods that I'll hopefully never get the memory back of, like some of the stuff that happened when I was tripping that I was told about. And I still don't remember it. Like one of my friends had come and visited me when I was in the mental hospital, when I had lost my memory completely, and said that I was smearing my feces on the wall, talking in gibberish. I don't remember that at all.
Yeah.
But like, if anything, the cautionary tale here is don't dive too deep without guidance.
Yeah.
And magic is very, very freaking real. There are people who will take advantage of you and do not have your best interest at heart. There are people who use magic to harm other people, and they do have a greater goal. Like they have things they are trying to achieve in the world. And it's actually quite scary, because people like you and I, we are few in number compared to the people who abuse the gifts that we naturally hold and have developed and learned and help people with.
You think we're few in number, but I know a bunch of us.
There are fewer of us out there helping, globally speaking. Like there are fewer of us out in the world helping people than harming people or using it for self-benefit.
Okay.
So,
well, I got to say though, also magic is real, and everybody is a magician though too. Like we were just on a meeting in this, this class, and one student was sharing how her mother used to say, our family, this is just how our family is with money. We'll never have money, and we're not good with money. And I was like, well, that's a hex. You know what I mean? Like that is.
You're putting that on yourself.
She doesn't know it. She doesn't know she's using magic to, hex herself and her family. So I think although it's like giving if you have more advanced tools, which there are more advanced tools in magic, then it's like putting a drunk driver behind the wheel, or a psychopath behind the wheel of a car.
Yeah.
Versus walking on the street. You're still going to get somewhere, but yeah, the more advanced tools, the more advanced technology. But don't you think because of that? I mean, I actually after we finish this recording, I'm teaching a class that I'm channeling, and it's called Ascended Alchemy and Modern Merlinian Magic. So I really feel
Sweet.
Like you want to come.
That's a nice name.
I know Merlin and this collective talked about it, but saying that we really need to learn magic and more advanced magical skills and be using them, the ones who are called, to in unified sense, you know what I mean, who are here to help heal, uplift, and do the good stuff. More of us need to really become more technically skilled in magic. And honestly, we are you probably incarnating from being on councils of light. And that's what we're supposed to be doing here. That's what we put on ourselves. And we're actually just recalling from past lives of the priesthood or priestesshoods that we've already done all of these magical things. So that's what we're going to talk about today in class. What do you think of that?
It's funny because like I've had this talk in different ways with other people before. Yeah. And no, you're definitely right. And it was really funny because one of my teachers, Master Thanaful, one of the monks, there was this like celebration of the bhikkhus, and they were making the ring of merit, and it was like this whole like ritual thing they were doing, and there was like over 200 monks at this event, and it was freaking awesome. And so my master was taking me around. He's like, I'm going to take you to the most powerful monks here, and I'm going to have them blow the power in you. Basically, they were going to kind of like share the power of their lineage and like etherically download it into me.
Kind of like a Shakti pot.
Yeah, exactly. So as he's like taking me around, he'd like pull me over to the side and like show me to like one of the monks, and he'd have me like like generate my chi, and he'd have me like, me who is not a monk, bless a monk. And then I was like confused by this, because he would take me the monks, and then he would have the monks like put the power in me, but then he would take me to these other monks who he said weren't strong enough to put the power in me. And then he had me put power in them, and I was just like really confused by that. And he was like, you've been a monk many lives before. He's like you owed them this, you owed them that, you're giving them what you promised them. And I'm just like, how do you even know this? Like, how? And he and like, and Master Thanapol was like, I remember. And I'm just like, I was like really puzzled by it at the time, but like now, like, it makes sense.
Sure.
He's just like, oh, like you're squaring up on old favors, like
That's cool. Well, it actually, the scene that as you were describing it too, well, like squaring up on the old favors or balancing karma from other lives, but it actually just brought to mind Jesus washing his disciples' feet. You know what I mean? Like how beautiful that ceremony was. So,
oh yeah,
maybe that was a
yeah,
part of it as well.
that is a lovely picture in the mind, definitely.
Yeah.
I've washed monk feet.
Oh, you have? Well, the last Christian denomination that I was a part of is called Seventh-day Adventist, and a part of their communion ritual is to do a foot washing service first too. So they see that's a part of the whole event.
I think that's a humility that is greatly needed.
I agree. Yeah. I think it's actually really beautiful. Like the few times that I did that, I felt like, you know what I mean? Like you feel like really overwhelmed with the beauty of it, mostly from receiving it, honestly, receiving your foot washing.
And what's interesting too, as like, and I'm sure this will make sense to you, but to some people this might not make sense. The act of that kind of service and doing that for someone can actually be very empowering for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. It's beautiful. And actually there was one of the last times, because I found it to be so beautiful and I was so vulnerable in the spiritual development in the Christian church at that time. And I was paired up with the pastor's wife, and it was this huge church that was like on TV and everything. And and I don't mean to be judgmental, but it was interesting because she couldn't humble herself. She was like teaching me. She was like, the purpose of this is to blah, blah, blah. And like, and I was only like 21. So I was a much younger woman than she, but and I was like, yes, I know. That's why I'm weeping, because it's beautiful. But she had to kind of like hold some dominion over the process a little bit. And that was, it was a little sad because yeah, but I still received the benefit of the beauty of, I don't know, you're still technically participating in the humility. But I don't know. Interesting, right?
Yeah, I mean, as long as you get something from it, at the end of the day, I'd say that's really all that matters.
Yeah. I've thought about implementing a foot washing ceremony in like whenever we have a retreat or something like that. I think it would be really beautiful. You have to contextualize it though, so that it doesn't feel too Christian or Catholic or something. But it could be really beautiful.
I mean, you could add elements of like, and it's not just like in like Theravada traditions that they do this. There's a lot of other Asian cultures that participate in what they call like flower baths. So it's kind of like an anointing or like a cleansing ritual where like, you have like water that's charged like holy water.
Yeah.
And then you take like sacred or auspicious like flowers, and then like, consecrated like oils. And then you put that in the water as well. And then you'll wash the body clean. You make the body a holy vessel. I actually had to do a flower bath the other day when I did a Rahu ritual for a client, and like I had to do 2 days of fasting. I had to do this flower bath ritual, and like I had to do all of this just so that I could be pure enough to go before the God that I was calling and summoning to do this ritual, which was for a client that was experiencing legal issues. And like, it was just really interesting to me because, Rahu is like technically like an asura, like, it's not a devil, but like, he's not like a high deity, but it's still a of us.
Yeah.
So he'd basically be like a worldly deity, if you're familiar with that concept.
Right. Totally.
So
That's
still a
beautiful.
king in its own right.
Yeah. And the concept of anointing and working with elements. I actually have a series that I teach in my Mystic Arts Academy, working with holy flames and crystalline elements, and being even just in your imagery to be able to work with them. That's powerful, but to physically work with them. And actually, I had some physical stuff going on. I had endometriosis really badly. And I kept asking my guides, what do I do? And they kept telling me to work with water. And then I had like 2 readings by 2 other people, and they kept getting that message too. So I think for whatever reason, I was actually asking my reproductive system where the pain was. I was asking what it wanted, and it said water. I'm like, well, I don't know how to get water in there. But it's spiritual.
Yeah, spiritual water.
Oh, goodness. Oh, gosh. I think we're just about out of time. So tell folks what you're up to, how they can get in contact with you, the kind of work that you are helping people with right now. Or you maybe all booked up with your Japanese lot of students right now.
Yeah. So, unfortunately, I am kind of like pressed for time recently, even though like I was able to quit my full-time job and I'm able to do this now like
So cool.
full-time, which is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But like I'm literally doing it full-time now. So I have like a steady base of a bunch of students in Japan. That's mainly what my time and energy is going to, but I do still have availabilities. I'm still doing like a yarn training, like teaching people in like Thai like Wicca, like from Theravada tradition, teaching like animistic practices of like really old magic that comes from like, the Asian cultures. And so like that's something that I'm still offering and teaching people, as well as making like some like the Gumantang and like pray, like basically spirit statues, and like personalized like talismans and amulets, and like some random ones I kind of upload on my website.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And so like that's kind of what I'm up to right now. And then
amazing.
like, trying to keep up with like my blog and all the stuff that.
Are you still going on other podcasts too?
I am. I have 5 more booked this month.
Oh my goodness, you're busy. Good for you.
Yeah, no, I'm actually doing like the biggest one I've ever done on Friday, which is going to be called Voices of Misery.
Okay. I haven't heard of that. Sounds great.
Yeah, so apparently they have like 2 million streams. Like they're supposed to be like really big, and it's a little because they're hiring me for, or not hiring me, they're booking me for their Halloween episode to talk about like spirit statues and like Thai Barang and stuff. And I'm like, I kind of feel like it's like a gimmick to them, but I'm gonna make some believers out of it.
Totally. So. Yeah, I know. And I've been on like a radio show that was, I think it was just like a pop radio show, but they had a morning show, how they do, and it was like, hey everyone, you got the hip hop radio show, whatever. And I went on that radio show, and myself and my other friend who's a medium, and we did really good readings. And the one DJ, like they were kind of tough guys, and the one DJ, his dog came through, and he was like, he had to put his sunglasses on, and he couldn't look at me because he was starting to get weepy because his beloved past pup was there, and he did get vulnerable. He was trying to like keep it together though, because he was nice and he was honored, but he was like, that's really cool. That's cool. Thank you. That kind of thing. I was like, all right, my job's done.
Yeah. You came, you conquered.
Yeah. But then the producer was a young woman, and she was like, my friend was trying to give her a reading, and she was like, she was being over demonstrative. She was like, oh my God, that's so crazy. And like, she was trying to like really resist it. And my friend was like, she was like, really didn't understand. She's like, I feel like she just didn't have any respect for it. I'm like, who cares? You know what I mean? Like, you did the work. She felt it. It's not our job we give love unconditionally, and then it's no longer our love anymore. So whatever they do with it is their business. And you're gonna go on there and be your wise, loving, illuminating, edifying self, and it'll be really cool. Oh, I have to say also, I have been on some other things that are kind of mainstream or paranormal or something, and got gotten students from it. Like they're like, oh, I was into paranormal seeking and that's how I found you. And then I realized I was actually on my
Interesting.
spiritual seeking and I didn't know it until I started to listen to you. So I affirm that there's a real good reason that you're going to be on there.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's even if like I go and do a podcast that has like 10 monthly listeners, like if I benefited somebody in some way or gave them some bit of knowledge or wisdom or helped them even just a little bit, it is worth the time
Yeah,
invested in doing it.
absolutely. Well, I'll have to check it out. Let me know when they're coming out and we'll blast it
I
out
will.
on social here
I'll
too.
I'll send it all to you.
Awesome. All right, everyone. So, of course, Sadhu's information is all in the description. And thank you so much for coming on again. Hopefully, it'll be again real soon.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that. Remember that all of Sadhu Dah's links are in the description below. And I want to just welcome you to this beautiful season that we are in. Now, if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, as I am, we are in fall, autumn. And this time of year, this transitional, liminal space of moving from a lighter time of year to a darker time of year, it's actually highly magical. Because as the light is changing and nature is changing and we are shifting our position in relationship to the sun, there is just a lot of opening to the inner spaces so that we can observe, so that we can make those partnerships with our creation partners. And it's also, well, but at the time that this is being released, which of course that's what I'm talking about. We're talking about fall of 2021. But at the time that this is being released, we are in a Mercury retrograde too, which is also an introspective time. A lot of power going on with the energy right now. If you're feeling slowed down, that's just an invitation to do some self-care, some introspection, and remembering that as we go within, we are connecting to the all, that which we consider as without, but in fact, you are everything. Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining me on this episode. We'll have another one coming up in about a week, maybe sooner. You never know. Check out the YouTube channel because we have all kinds of different unique content there, as well as some video excerpts of a conversation such as this one with Sadhu Dah. It'll be coming out pretty soon. And other ones that with my other guests and plenty that I just do on my own. So I invite you to like, subscribe, share, comment, leave a review here on the podcast, if you will. That helps us to boost our light quotient. It also helps us to make our connection, you and me, a little bit deeper. And also I'm on Instagram, so you can follow me there. Links are in the description at Tricia Carr Charm. And that's what I have for you today, guys. Thanks for tuning in. I love you, whoever you are.